In 1973, geopolitics created a shock to the cost of crude oil. Petrol increased by 300%, and this is a picture of the impact. Now, 50 years on, the energy regulator evoked a sense of déjà vu by comparing this crisis to the one facing us today.
The price changes we have seen in the gas market are genuinely a once-in-a-generation event, not seen since the oil crisis in the 1970s.
As bills for families mount, the man at the helm of the energy regulator told them to expect a hike.
Now, I know this is a very distressing time for customers, but I do need to be clear with this committee, with customers and with the government about the likely price implications for October. Now, this is uncertain. We are only part way through the price cap window, but we are expecting a price cap in October in the region of £2,800.
Just last October, the price cap was £1,277. On April 1st, that jumped to nearly £2,000. But worse is yet to come. If Ofgem's estimate of £2,800 proves right, the cap will have risen by more than £1,500, an increase of 120% in just 12 months. Ofgem estimates that will leave 12 million households in fuel poverty. That's more than 40% of all households in the country.
It confirms that this winter coming up is going to be the most desperate time for people who are already struggling to get by on limited budgets. Not just financial hardship, mental and physical ill health, so many economic kind of impacts on low-income communities, as well as how it could not be any worse. The solutions remain the same, but the scale and the urgency for government have really just stepped up.
Not only are the prices rising, so too is the political pressure for a windfall tax on the profits of energy companies. The government has already moved its position from dismissing those plans to, according to reports, considering whether those plans should be expanded to include the profits of electric companies as well. But a decision is far from certain. There remains opposition within the cabinet.
You support a windfall tax?
I've been very clear about a windfall tax. I don't think it supports investment. I don't think it's necessarily the right thing. But as I always say, that's up to the Chancellor. He sees the economy across the piece. He is responsible for fiscal policy. And he's instinctively against windfall taxes. But if he feels that these extraordinary times require extraordinary measures, that's up to him.
This week may also see the Chancellor announce a new cost of living package, following today's stark warning.
We are really managing between two extreme versions of events. One, where the price falls back down to where it was before, for example, if we did see peace in Ukraine, but one where prices could go even further if we were to see, for example, a disruptive interruption of gas from Russia.
This is what happens when our energy security is now bound by what Putin does next. The Treasury now faces choices over how to protect the most vulnerable from growing energy poverty. At present, major gas suppliers are posting billions in profits, and families are losing sleep.
Well, joining me now is the Labour MP Darren Jones, who chairs the Commons Business and Energy Committee. Darren Jones, Ofgem reckons that 12 million homes, some 40% of UK households, will be in fuel poverty after October the 1st. That can't be allowed to happen, can it?
No, I agree, and the government needs to hurry up and announce how it's going to help them. The Business Secretary said today that the warm homes discount has been expanded to 3 million homes, but clearly there are 12 million homes that are going to be in fuel poverty by the end of the year. More support needs to be given to bill payers, targeted at those who are the poorest, as soon as possible, not just because it's the right thing to do, but because it's driving inflation across the entire economy. OK,
so the Treasury is drawing up some measures, possibly to be announced within days, including looking at whether that windfall tax that's been proposed should be widened to electricity generators too. Is that something Labour would back, widening the windfall tax?
Well, the idea of the windfall tax is to create a market correction for an unfair and unexpected distribution of wealth from bill payers to company shareholders. It's not to tax profits that have been fairly created by companies investing or innovating or through the efforts of their workforce. It's about market corrections. And if there are other companies who have unexpectedly profited in that way, then yes, I think they should be considered as part of that windfall tax assessment.
And so if you look at the cost to consumers across the board of the increased energy cap. It comes to £18 billion. How much of that would you like the government to meet?
Well, I think the government needs to do an impact assessment to see how many households are affected in terms of fuel poverty and target their efforts more effectively. I did not need a £200 forced loan on my energy bill to repay over the next few years. I would rather that had gone to other people. The council tax rebate, whilst I understand is maybe an easy way of getting money out of the door, it's not particularly targeted either. The government needs to be much more flexible and much more urgent in bringing forward support targeted to those who need it the most.
OK, you keep mentioning targeting. So what about the idea of a social tariff that people on the lowest incomes pay less for their energy? Is that so? It's a pretty radical idea. Is it something you would like to explore?
It is, and my committee's been asking questions and taking evidence on it. We used to have social tariffs. We've moved to a price cap. I think there might be a case when the market settles down to review a social tariff again in the future, because clearly the price cap is not helping families on the lowest incomes to be able to continue to heat and power their homes in a way that we should all be able to do in an economy as wealthy as ours.
A lot of people would think, you know, that is a radical idea and it's not something you would associate with peacetime. Is there an argument that this is a kind of akin to a wartime situation and, you know, where you've got energy price cap is a kind of price control of sorts? Is that something that, in your view, should be applied to other areas where prices are soaring, like food, for example?
Well, I think there's long been a case for social tariffs across key utilities. But in order to tackle the cost of living crisis more generally, we need to stop inflation running away with itself in this country. That's why we've called for action on energy bills, a key driver of inflation. If the Chancellor had acted sooner, I don't think inflation would be high as it is now. But I think there should also be tax cuts. Labour forced a vote to cut the national insurance tax rise, and the Conservatives opposed it. Labour forced a vote to keep the universal credit uplift of £20. The Conservatives opposed it. These are measures that will put money in people's pockets at a time when they need it. And it looks to me as if the Chancellor's finally getting around to accepting Labour's proposals, and rightly so.
OK, you have to come up with some new ideas then. Darren Jones, thanks very much for joining us.